And this morning, I get to speak to you about the mind. What's going on in your mind matters. Now, when I speak about the mind, a lot of the times I'm going to make reference to the brain, and I just want to make one clarification. They are very similar. The brain is the muscle that you have that is tangible. Okay, you can't really touch it, but if you could touch it. It's a muscle inside you, and it directs all your thoughts. The mind is your brain plus all the emotions and decisions that you make. So a lot of what's going on in our mind has to do with what's going on in our brains. Just for reference. Some very interesting facts about the brain. It's we produce 70,000 thoughts a day. And if you're good with math and you break it down to minutes, that's around 45 to 48 thoughts in a minute. Wow, you're so not impressed about that. I was like, that's a lot of thoughts. No wonder I'm so tired. But that's how many thoughts. That's why sometimes you're speaking with people and they already have moved on. That's why a lot of the times people will finish a sentence before you get there, because they kind of while you are thinking, while you are talking, they are busy thinking and they want to produce their thoughts. That's a lot of thinking going on there. I think the first service had more thinking than the second one. The second service is waking up to their thinking. That's okay. During our sleep, which is what you were doing before you came to church, the brain works on cleansing all the rubbish that goes into our brains. That's why sleeping is such an important thing, especially if we're struggling with mental health. Sleeping 6 to 8 hours, 8 hours more, and a lot of us are going to go home and say, the pastor said I should sleep. It's a good thing. It's created by God. Don't fight it. Just embrace it. 6 to 8 hours or 12 hours, you're pushing it a little bit. If you're a teenager and you want to sleep that much, come to visit my house and I'll sort you out. But that's the process. That's why the first thing when we are stressing, the first thing that goes is our ability to sleep well. And that's why we wake up so tired the next day, because our brain hasn't been able to cleanse all the rubbish. And now we're starting the day with a whole bunch of rubbish in our brain. I know, right? Our attention span has dropped. In the year 2000, it was 12 seconds, which is really bad. That means I lost you already probably 10 times since I started speaking. It has dropped to 8 seconds. That's how much you can concentrate. Now again, if you have kids or a husband, you understand that, because you're like, that's why I have to repeat myself so many times, right? But what is more interesting is we have less attention span than a goldfish. That is insulting. Huh. So if you hear, not just me, but if you hear anybody on a stage telling you to high five the person next to you, to say amen out loud, that's because we can see goldfish come back. It's not a spiritual practice. It's just us making you aware that I can see you are gone. Come back to the talk. And then the last one is the speed of your thoughts can move. A thought in your brain goes from one neuron to the next one, 430 kilometers per hour. So the boys, just imagine a Ferrari. It's faster than that. That's how quick. That's why, again, when you're having an argument with a female and you're still thinking about how to get out of that, we have already sorted out that excuse and come back with a new one. Because that's how fast our ideas are going. Yeah, but this happened because, I thought about that. You were going to say that, and, that's how fast it goes. What happens in our minds matters. This generation, the Gen Z generation, has been called the depressed generation. It has been called the anxious generation. Again, that's a terrible title to hold to. And a lot of it has to do with the pandemic that we went through and how aware this generation is of what mental health entitles compared to previous generation. But I really don't believe that this is God's plan for us. That He knew the beginning and the end. He knew everything that was going to go on. And then He decided, this generation, you are on your own, depressed generation, I'll see you in heaven. That is not God's plan for us. That's actually what the enemy wants to do, because the more consumed we are by our thoughts being negative and stressful and anxious, the less time we have to live the life that God has set up for you and I. So what goes on in our minds matters. I want you to think of your mind as this picture of a field that has never been walked on. This is what our minds were designed for in Genesis. When God created us, He gave us a blank canvas. There was no roads, no path, no nothing. And when we started deciding we want to get from point A to point B, like if the field was around here and I wanted to cross the street, what you do is you make a path. So the more you walk that path, into the next picture please, the more the path becomes obvious. That's how civilization started, when there was no roads. That's why the highways have been made, because people needed to get from point A to point B, and they were doing it over and over again, so I might as well just give them a paving road so that they can get there faster. That's how our brain works. That's why it's so difficult sometimes to convince someone of something different if they have already made up their mind. I don't know about you, but if you have ever dealt with a teenager that has this brilliant idea, no matter how much you tell them that it's a terrible idea, they have made that path. They have walked that path multiple times. So it doesn't matter what you say, they're going to do it. If you have ever spoken to someone that is in love, and you want to convince them to be a bit more careful, they're not going to listen because they have walked this path. That's how our brain works. The more we use a thought, the more that path becomes solid. So when it comes to our thinking, if we have thought about something and we constantly keep thinking about it, it becomes a path that is so natural for us, so mechanical for us to just go there. It's just how it happens. Now, praise Jesus that He knew that we were going to struggle with this, and He gave us a way out. Romans 12, verse 2. In the Message Bible, let's start from verse 1. So here's what I want you to do. God helping you. Amen. We really need His help. Take your everyday, ordinary life. You're sleeping, you're eating, you're going to work and walking around life, and place it before God as an offering. Embracing what God does for you is the best thing you can do for Him. Don't become so well adjusted to your culture that you fit in even without thinking. Instead, fix your attention on God. You will be changed from the inside out. Readily recognize what He wants from you and quickly respond to it. Unlike the culture around you always dragging you down to its level of maturity, God brings the best out of you, develops well-formed maturity in you. The same passage in the Amplified Version says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, by the mercy of God, to present your body, dedicate all of yourself, set apart as a living sacrifice, holy and well-pleasing to God, which is your rational, logical, intelligent act of worship. Our brain doesn't go out the window when we met Jesus. And do not be conformed to this world any longer with its superficial values and costume, but be transformed and progressively changed as you mature spiritually by the renewing of your mind. Focusing on godly values and ethical attitudes so that you may prove for yourself what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect in His plan and purpose for you. God created us with a mind that was like a blank canvas. Sin comes into the world, messes up that for us, and now we struggle with thinking that is not really godly thinking. 80% of our thoughts, when I mentioned 70,000 thoughts per day, 80% of our thoughts are negative thoughts. And not only they are negative thoughts, they are also repetitive thoughts. Like I said before, if you have made a path, you are constantly going to use that path. In general, if we have to think about what stresses us and what makes us anxious, it will fall under the same category. You won't have a list of 300 unknown reasons why to stress. It normally will rely, depends on the age and stage of life. It will be about your future. If you're trying to decide what to study, who to marry, it will be future related. You're stressing about that. That's what you're thinking about. That's the path that you're going back and forward. If you are married, you're probably stressing about your marriage. Are we doing it right? Are we not? This is the right person. Are we not? You're stressing about that. You're stressing about financial stress. You are thinking, can I make it this month? Can I not make it? Should I tithe? Should I not tithe? Should I give my offering? Should I not give my offering? Is this the right thing? Those are what our thoughts pattern comes back and forward. That's where we are going. It's in general the same kind of thinking. And then tomorrow, guess what? You're going to wake up and stress all over again about the same thing because your thinking is repetitive. That's why we can do certain things without even thinking about it. Because we have done it so much. Have you ever drove to a place and you don't know how you got there? You were like kind of in automatic, you just like got in the car. It's so natural. It's the same with our thinking. We are so accustomed to certain thinking that it's natural for us. And only when someone interrupts that thinking and makes us aware that that's not the right way of thinking, that we are like, oh, really? But I always thought like that. I genuinely thought that everybody was an overthinker. Because I'm an overthinker, so of course everybody's going to overthink. How can you not think about anything? That's not even possible. You know what I'm saying? And then I find another overthinker and I'm like, yeah, buddy. Let's look at these people that don't overthink anything. You know what I'm saying? That is the path that we create. God has given us the ability to renew our mind. It is a natural, biological thing that has been discovered in the last couple of years that our brains have the capacity of changing. Before that, it was believed that that's your brain, that's how it is, that's it. It can't develop, it can't change, it can't create new connection, that is it. But now the latest studies show that we have neuroplasticity, which means our brain can change. Our brain has the capacity to change. It's almost as if God knew that we will need the extra help when it comes to our thinking to renew our mind. That's what Paul is trying to say in Romans. And I love the fact that he says renewing of your mind. It's something that is continuously happening. If you have studied English or you're a teacher in English, I had to learn this. When the word has an ing, it means that it's constantly happening. Renewing of your mind. It's something that you have to do constantly. It's not like, I renew my mind when I gave my life to Jesus and then I never thought anything wrong. I renew my mind this morning when I pray for Jesus to protect me, and then the rest of the day, not one bad thought came my way. No, right? You have to constantly go back to renewing of your mind. Now, why does renewing our mind matters? We've spoken about it matters. How we steer our minds, it matters. Why does it matter? I'm going to give you some reasons. Number one, because it shapes our reality. Our mind has the capacity, the ability to shape our reality. Our mind is how we perceive the world. We come into this world. You came to church today with a sort of set of thoughts that no one can change for you. We can sit down and have a cup of coffee and discover why you think that way. Maybe it has to do with your upbringing, your previous experiences. But in general, we come to whatever experience we come to work with a certain idea. We perceive the world in a certain idea, in a certain manner. And that directs how we think. If you have a negative connotation to rainy days, today, it's a suckish day. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, seriously, you just stay in bed. You have those where you're like, and then next to you have a person like, I love this weather. I'm so glad it's not hot. And you're like, what? Like, what? I love winter. Who are you? Move to the UK. Why? Like, you're in South Africa, like Africa, and you love winter? There's a lot going on there that we need to unpack. But you have that set of thinking, and it could be preference, it could be where you grew up, it could be like a whole bunch of things, but that's your perception of the world. Now, who is right or wrong? Obviously, I'm right. Because I have the microphone. No, I'm kidding. But it's not a right or wrong thing, it's just the way that we perceive stuff. Our mind shapes our reality. It also shapes how we believe and the actions that we take. Because what you are thinking will lead you to acting. A thought that can be planted, it makes you do something. That's what they say. Don't go to the shops when you're hungry. Because you're thinking, oh, I'm hungry. You walk past something nice. It's never the healthy option. You're like, sounds like a good idea. You leave the shop spending money that you didn't need to spend, eating stuff that's not really good for you, because that thought just came, and I did. That thought came and I did. We so often have these discussions. We're like, I thought about it, therefore I did. Almost as if thinking about something just gives you the right to do something stupid. No, it doesn't. It shapes our reality. The second reason why renewing our mind matters is because our mind impacts our mental health. There has been, again, so many studies, especially after the pandemic, that show that how we think affects our mental health, and not in a positive way. The more stress we deal with, the more anxiety we deal with, the more depressed we feel, the more it affects our pattern of sleep. It also affects how we talk to ourselves. You probably talk to yourself more than you talk to anybody else. And it's not because you're crazy, it's just because of how our minds work. We talk to ourselves. And if you have a positive mindset, if you have a positive thought, you woke up in a good mood, I woke up early, I did my exercise, I read, I had quiet time with Jesus. What is your talk going to be like to yourself? It's going to be like, yes, you're good. Well done, high five. You pack your water today. No juice, You went to gym, come on. But if your self-talk and your thinking is negative, your self-talk is going to be what? There you go again. I knew you were going to mess up. You could have got it right. Nope, there's another mistake. Some of us have no grace or mercy when we speak to ourselves. Why does renewing our mind matter? Number 3, because it influences our physical health. When we have thoughts that are stressful, our body goes into a fight or flight mode, which again, created by God for extreme situations where you need that adrenaline to survive. If you have to think of a cave time where the people have to survive, they went into a fight or flight mode when they saw an animal that could come and hurt them. Fight or flight, survive. So on your fight or flight mode, your body, your whole body shuts down and your brain thinks they need to survive. That's all they need to think. Your brain directs all your energy, all your resource of the food that you have consumed, everything to surviving. So it is great for that short period of time. But when your brain does that for an extended period of time, when the stress level continues every single day, your body starts deteriorating because you were not made to flight or fight. That's just a situation for a specific time. That stress response, it generates heart issues, blood pressure issues. It affects your immune system. Have you seen how many people go through a tragic thing, a trauma, and then days after that they get sick? You get like flu sick. You're like, oh, I don't know what happened. Your body gave in. Your body is like, I'm out, fight or flight. Now it's time for me to recover. It also matters because there is a body-mind connection. If you can think better thoughts, your body acts better to it. Now, can I just say, this is not yoga. This is not like positive thinking. This is a spiritual matter about saying, God, you gave me this mind, and I have the power, the responsibility to steward it. Again, people of the world have taken our principle, have understood that there is power in our mind, and if you change your thinking, you can change your life, have put it in books, and they're making millions out of it. Us Christians are like, oh. There is power on choosing what we think. The last one, why does renewing our mind matters? Because it affects our relationships. How you relate to other people is directly connected to how you think. That's why in South Africa it's so obvious the problem that we have with racism. Racism was gone officially from the book for how many years? Yet we have generations that still have a problem with that. Why? because the way that we think affects the people and how we relate with them. Some of us have given over the way that we think to our children. And it's a natural thing for our children to think that way. It's a very scary thing, or how we can interact with others just based on how we think. If I have a preference for a certain type of people, I'm obviously going to treat them and relate to them better. And my brain is going to justify why. I have often shared this example when I came to South Africa, because I'm not from here. So racism, as in skin colors, doesn't affect me as much as someone that was born here. Praise Jesus for that. So I don't see that much of an issue with that. But I'm very aware when I came here, there was a specific race that made me feel very uncomfortable and out. Therefore, I don't like them, or I didn't like them. And then Jesus sent me to the most Afrikaans town that he could find in South Africa, so you can work out your issues. Sense of humor, right? Never mind the fact that the person that I marry is half Afrikaans. Sense of humor. Go tell Jesus what you don't want and what you don't like. He will sort you out. It's how I perceive the world. It's my experience, which I totally feel like it was an honest experience. And that's how I perceive the world. That's how I relate to people. The moment that they greet me with an accent, I like shut down. My whole brain goes into like, I don't speak their language, so here we go. Hello. Right? But then God had the amazing grace of showing me that that's just not right. When we go to heaven, there's not going to be English section, Spanish section, Afrikaans section, so we don't just touch with each other. It's going to be a one massive party. You're probably going to end up sitting next to someone that you didn't like very much in earth. Because that's going to be God for you, for your sense of humor in eternity. Sit next to this person. Right? It affects how we relate to others. Negative thinking also doesn't help our level of disagreement. I am so aware when a specific type of car comes on the road in front of me, that my thinking in South Africa, not in Argentina because we don't have that problem in Argentina, but in South Africa, my body, no, I have a little more of grace for them. I refer to a white type of car that also works as a transport. And my brain has been shaped when I see that to know. I don't care who they are. I don't know if they love Jesus, but they're going to do something wrong, and I have to be ready to press the hooter. The moment they're like, and give them a piece of advice on how to drive. My brain has been adjusted to that. Praise the Lord that he knew that there was going to be something called you need to renew your mind. Renewing of our minds, it matters. Dr. Caroline Leaf, which has amazing material on all the stuff that I have mentioned. She's a Christian psychologist and South African, so that's like triple points for her. Says on her book, as we think, we change the physical nature of our brain. As we consciously direct our thinking, we can wire our toxic patterns of thinking and replace them with healthy thoughts. We have the power when our brains are throwing all these thoughts, and 80% they are negatives, and I know we have reasons why. There's a reason why we're scared of crime. There's a reason why we locked our door. There's a reason why when we go to the mall, we make sure the phones are covered. I understand that. I'm not saying by all means to be silly and not use any of that. But what I'm saying is when the enemy takes that to make us anxious and stressed and scared and forget that the God that we serve lives beyond the crime in the country and his plan doesn't stop with the crime in the country, then we have a problem. And our brain has the capacity to change that. We no longer can say, that's how I am. I grew up like that. You don't understand. No, I don't understand. But I do know that God has given us the ability to renew our mind because it matters. As we walk with Jesus and we say, Jesus, we want to be your disciples, we cannot walk with the same mindset that we had before we met him. If you were racist before you met Jesus, and now you have Jesus in your heart, you're still racist, then you didn't meet Jesus at all. If you were selfish before you met Jesus, and now you have Jesus in your heart, and you're still selfish, then you didn't meet Jesus at all. Or you met a version of Jesus that is not complete. Because Jesus comes and changes everything. And with that, he has given us the ability to change how we think too. Not easy at all. As I say, I'm an overthinker, so I can, if you think you don't have 70,000 thoughts a day, that's probably because I stole some of yours. I'm good like that. I have done the 70,000 for me, for my husband, for my kids, and then I share them with them. Because I am an overthinker of notes. And as I said before, it has been liberating for me to find freedom on Jesus, to know that I don't have to live my life constantly overthinking because 80% of the thoughts are anyway negative. The only way to stop that is to have Jesus in your heart. I don't know how other people do it. I know the yoga and stuff works for some people, for certain stuff. But on the deep core of who we are, we need to be renewing our minds. And it's an every day, every moment process. As I shared with the first service, it's something that happens to us when we just had our first son and our only son, my favorite son. I often say to him, you're my favorite son. He said, I'm the only one. I know, but you're still my favorite. He could be my only son and not be my favorite. You know what I'm saying? There's always that option. You are my favorite. You should celebrate that. When he was born, he was 2 days, and they admitted to NICU because he had yellow jaundice. Never heard that baby cry. He didn't cry at all until the nurses tried to put a needle, a drip on his arm, and then he screamed. He didn't cry. He screamed for like 10 solid minutes. My husband was punching walls, hospital walls. I was like, Lord Jesus, if I go in, there's going to be nurses flying. And then the excuse was that they couldn't get the needle in. I'm like, he's this size. You are this size. It's 3 of you, 1 of him. And you cannot, I was finding Christianity to be diminishing by the minute. But it made me very aware. At the same time that he was in NICU, we lost one of our teenagers. And it made me very aware that life is very fragile. I know we say it all the time, but we kind of forget and we move on. I became so aware that there was a possibility that my kid could not be around me. And it freaked me out. And it started this pattern of being fearful. Or where is he? What is he doing? Is he breathing? Is he sleeping? Even when he was out with his dad, which it didn't happen very often, but the one day my husband decided, I'm going to the bank. You need to rest. Let me take the baby with me. Worst idea ever. Because he also decided to have his phone on silence and not answer. So I just kind of guesstimate 5 minutes to the bank because it's around the corner, 5 minutes to get in. If he's busy, 10. After 15 minutes, I sent a message, are you on your way back? And then he didn't reply. And then I phoned, and then he didn't answer. By the time that he came back, I saw that they were kidnapped. Someone took my kid. Something happened. The police is going to phone me. I don't know who I phoned. Do I run there? Do I wait? By the time that he got home, I was crying. I was freaking out. I punched him, not punch him. Because you guys are very dramatic now. You're like, yo, they punch. I can punch him on his arm, and he can handle it. He has big muscles. He can handle it. I punched him like, how can you do this? You didn't answer. He was like, what? In my head, all this has gone on. On his head, he's like, I'm here. I just did you the best favor I could. I took the baby so you can rest. I was in a state. He's like, I don't know. I didn't hear my phone. Was on silent. But in my brain, all this stuff has happened. And I had to discover that I have to take hold of my thoughts. When they go all crazy, it's like when your kids throw a tantrum. If your kid is throwing a tantrum and wants to run to the street, you don't okay, good luck, see you in the hospital. You're going to hold them down. Sometimes they need to be held down and calm down. And when you're calm, I'll let you go. Sometimes we need to do that with our thoughts. We need to kind of take hold of that and be like, calm down, I'll let you go when you think clearly. Sometimes we have to put ourselves in that place. We have to put ourselves in time out, as if we could, and speak to ourselves. Often David says, I tell my soul, I tell myself. Sometimes we have to go into that corner and be like, okay, you need to speak to yourself now. You're being ridiculous. You're being crazy. That doesn't make sense. Because if someone else comes and says that to us, but we can say that to ourselves. It's our responsibility. It matters. How we manage and how we steward our minds matters. And it's our responsibility.